Coming up on The World Today. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden says White House is sincere in helping his transition to power. Car rams into German Chancellor Angela Merkel's federal chancellery building in Berlin. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he won't ask for Brexit extension. Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Akaite Afia. We began today in the United States as President-elect Joe Biden said cooperation from the White House over the transition has been sincere. He made the comment as he unveiled his choice of top officials known for when he takes over from Donald Trump in January. Mr. Trump finally agreed to allow the formal transition process to begin on Monday, nearly 3 weeks after the presidential election. Yet he still refuses to admit defeat, repeating unsubstantiated claims that the November 3rd vote was rigged.
Secretary for Homeland Security, I nominate Alejandro Mayorkas. This is one of the hardest jobs in government. After years of chaos, dysfunction, and absolute cruelty at DHS, I'm proud to nominate an experienced leader who has been hailed by both Democrats and Republicans. Given its critical role in immigration matters, I'm proud that for the first time ever, the department will be led by an immigrant, a Latino, who knows that we are a nation of laws and values.
VOA senior White House correspondent Patsy Widakuswara joins us now for more. Patsy, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So with the power tussle going on for more than 3 weeks, what does Joe Biden mean that the White House has so far been sincere in helping his transition to power?
So President Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden, I should say, made that statement specifically was in regards to the transition in terms of working together on COVID, particularly vaccine distribution. So what happens when the transition process begins officially through this process called ascertainment, essentially a formal announcement by the administrator of the General Services Administration. What happens is that the Biden transition team can now formally communicate with the different agencies in the United States government. And so, of course, obviously right now, the big focus is on pandemic and as well as vaccine distribution. And this is what President-elect Joe Biden was referring to when he's saying that the White House coronavirus task force has been sincere in trying to help his team go through this process, and that there has been serious communications between the two teams. And in fact, Health Secretary Alex Azar yesterday said that he wants to personally ensure that the Biden transition team is getting all the information that they need in terms of vaccine distribution and the pandemic.
So President Trump accepted yesterday that the Biden transition must begin, but the Biden camp has been working actively ever since his projected win. So you did mention formal communication, but what else does this acceptance from Trump change for the Biden camp? Like, what access do they have now?
So there are a couple of important things. The first one is that now the Biden-Harris transition team has access to about $6.3 million of transition funds, as well as an office space in Washington, D.C., so that they can better communicate with all the related U.S. government agencies. The other important thing that President-elect Joe Biden will be receiving on a daily basis is what's called a PDB, or a personal daily briefing. This is essentially intelligence that the president-elect needs to keep updated on the national security issues, obviously on the pandemic, as well as other threats that the country may be facing, so that he can essentially hit the ground running on day one. So those are the important things that now President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris has access to.
Well, Mr. Trump is expected later on today to join his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, in Pennsylvania, where what is being described as a hearing of the state Senate's Republican majority on allegations of voter fraud is taking place. So what more do we know about this at this time?
So that's certainly been widely reported since last night that the President Donald Trump will travel to Pennsylvania to meet his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and attend this state Senate hearing on election fraud. However, about half an hour ago, I received an email from pool reporters at the White House who said that they had originally been told to prepare for the Pennsylvania trip, but now the trip has been canceled. So that's the latest information that I have on this issue. However, I should add that while President Trump has allowed or has said on Twitter that he accepts the fact that the General Service Administration has begun the formal ascertainment to allow the transition process, he himself has not conceded, and his campaign has also still pursued a number of legal challenges, even though we know that more than 30 lawsuits have been thrown out in numerous courtrooms around the country because they were considered either frivolous or baseless, or the Trump campaign just simply failed to provide evidence. Having said that, by December 8th, all these legal challenges have to be resolved. And by December 14th, all the states will need to certify their election results, and the electors will have to formally cast their votes for the next vice president and president of the United States.
Well, Patsy, just one more question before I let you go. What reactions are Joe Biden's picks getting, especially as most of them were colleagues under the Obama administration?
Well, obviously, these picks are getting very good reviews from Democrats, and there are some reactions coming in from Republicans. But one thing that the Biden-Harris campaign has been trying to underscore is the fact that these people are experienced professionals, and that they are centrists in the sense that they understand that these nominations, the ones that have to go through Senate, will have to receive bipartisan support. So they can't really pick anybody who's on, ideologically extreme side. The other thing that the Biden-Harris campaign has been underscoring is the fact that these people have essentially sent out a message that America is back on the world stage, multilateralism is back, and diplomacy is back. And the key thing that they will need to be doing is to reach out to allies around the world and say that America wants to go back together in a number of, agreements from the Paris Climate Accord, as well as cooperation in terms of handling the pandemic. One important thing I'd like to note that I think will be interesting to your viewers is that Joe Biden's nominee for his chief of staff is Ron Klain, who was Obama's point person in dealing with the Ebola pandemic, and is certainly expected to bring his experience in dealing with that and dealing with African countries on how to handle the pandemic, to bring that experience to face the pandemic that we are facing globally right now.
All right. Well, Patsy, thank you so much for joining us today, and do stay safe out there.
Thank you. You too.
In the meantime, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani says that Iran and the United States can fully reverse 4 years of Donald Trump and return to conditions before his presidency. In a televised cabinet speech, Mr. Rouhani says if the incoming Joe Biden administration has the political will, Iran-U.S. relations could be very different. However, he also outlined what Iran would expect of future President Biden. He says he hopes that in its first steps, the next U.S. administration should explicitly condemn President Trump's policies on Iran, calling the policies anti-human rights and terroristic. In May 2018, President Trump unilaterally withdrew from a landmark nuclear deal reached between Iran and world powers in 2015 and imposed harsh economic sanctions on Tehran. The sanctions only intensified as Iran started battling the deadliest outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic of the Middle East, which has now killed nearly 50,000 people. Elsewhere, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has asked the international community to stand by until the government of Ethiopia submits its request for assistance in the ongoing Tigray crisis. The Prime Minister, who says the country appreciates the concerns of the international community, also adds that the country rejects any interference in its internal affairs. Mr. Abiy also asked the international community to respect the fundamental principles of non-intervention under international law. Now, this comes as a deadline set by the government for the fighters in the region to surrender expires today.
Philemon says he never expected to be a refugee, but thousands of Ethiopians like him continue to flee across Sudan's border with the conflict-hit Tigray region.
We never expected to be a refugee. We never expected to see those shelters. We never expected. Everyone never expected for these things. Because we were in a very safe condition. We were in our developing, everyone trying to have family, everyone works, everyone studies, some of them work is help family. We never expected to be refugee. We never expected. I can tell you for sure, 100%.
The UNHCR says that the number of refugees in Sudan had now passed 40,000, including 5,000 who escaped fighting at the weekend, and relocating them has been a problem.
We have a challenge. It is mainly relocating the refugees. The process, the trip takes more than 15 hours from this reception center to Umrakuba camp in Gadaref state. So it is a lot of work we do.
Philemon says the situation he finds himself in is challenging, but at least he feels safe.
If we were in our city, it would be very, very, very dangerously. So right now here, at least we are safe. At least we are safe. We didn't hear any kind of explosion. We didn't hear any kind of weapons. We are here very safe, actually. But actually, there's a lot of challenge right here because when we try to escape, we didn't take any kind of luggage or baggage. We just only escape, and we have no any kind of blanket and something carpet because we are just only scared and trying to escape to Sudani, to Hamdai.
Reports from inside Tigray are difficult to verify, especially because communication lines have been cut off. A deadline from the Ethiopian government to the Tigrayan authorities to surrender expires on Wednesday. However, TPLF fighters say they will not back down as they are ready to die in defense of their land. On Tuesday, the UN's Office of the High Commissioner for Refugees expressed alarm at a build-up of tanks around the regional capital, Mekelle.
The highly aggressive rhetoric on both sides regarding the fight for Mekelle is dangerously provocative, and it risks placing already vulnerable and frightened civilians in grave danger.
Shamdasani said the High Commissioner was worried such rhetoric would lead to further violations of international humanitarian law.
Australia has cancelled the citizenship of an Algerian-born Muslim cleric who was convicted of leading a terrorist cell that planned to bomb a football match in Melbourne in 2005. Abdul Nasser Benbrika is now the first person to be stripped of his citizenship while still in Australia. Benbrika was convicted on 3 terrorism charges. He was jailed for 15 years for directing a terrorist group, being a member of a terrorist group, and possessing material associated with the planning of a terrorist attack. Benbrika remains in an Australian prison despite finishing his sentence. Under Australian law, Canberra is permitted to detain anyone convicted of terror offences for up to 3 years after the sentence finishes. However, lawyers for Benbrika have appealed against his ongoing detention.
But today I can confirm that on the 20th of November I cancelled the Australian citizenship of convicted terrorist Abdul Nasser Benbrika. He's the first individual to have lost his citizenship on shore under the terrorism-related provisions of the Australian Citizenship Act of 2007. And given Benbrika no longer holds Australian citizenship, he's granted an ex-citizen visa by operation of law under the Migration Act. But Benbrika has been notified of his citizenship loss and he'll remain in prison whilst an interim detention order is in force pending the court's consideration of the application for a continuing detention order. In this instance, he spoke about thousands of Australians being killed, and that's what he advocated at the time. He's convicted, obviously, in relation to those matters, and it doesn't matter who it is. If it's a person that's posing a significant terrorist threat to our country, then we will do whatever is possible within Australian law to protect Australians, and that remains our priority. And in relation to Benbrika, we're taking action in the court at the moment that we believe will give us the best opportunity to keep Australians safe.
Well, this breaking news has just come in. Football legend Diego Maradona is dead. Reports say the 60-year-old former Argentina attacking midfielder and manager had cardiac arrest in his home. He had successful surgery on a brain blood clot earlier in November and was to be treated for alcohol dependency. One of the greatest players of all time, Maradona was captain when Argentina won the 1986 World Cup, producing a series of sublime individual performances. He played for Barcelona and Napoli during his club career, winning 2 Serie A titles with the Italian side. Still ahead on The World Today. Meghan opens up. The Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, tells of a miscarriage, a story of pain and grief. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Football legend Diego Maradona is dead. Reports say the 60-year-old former Argentina attacking midfielder and manager had a cardiac arrest at home. He had successful surgery on a brain blood clot earlier in November and was to be treated for alcohol dependency. One of the greatest players of all time, Maradona was captain when Argentina won the 1986 World Cup, producing a series of sublime individual performances. He played for Barcelona and Napoli during his club career, winning 2 Serie A titles with the Italian side. Police in Germany say a car has been driven into the gates of Angela Merkel's federal chancellery building in Berlin. A 54-year-old man was detained, but the background to the incident is unclear. Reports say the Volkswagen had messages in white on both sides. One called for an end to globalization politics, while another referred to "you damned killers of children and old people." The incident comes hours before Mrs. Merkel holds talks with regional leaders on extending COVID safety measures. It is not known if she was in the building at the time. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced that the UK would not ask for more time to negotiate a post-Brexit trade deal with the European Union, despite significant differences remaining between the two parties. Britain and the EU are trying to agree on terms to keep annual bilateral trade worth nearly $1 trillion free of tariffs and quota from 2021, when a standstill transition period ends following Britain's departure from the EU. Addressing the House of Commons for Prime Ministers questions via web link, Mr. Johnson says that the UK would not seek an extension to the transition period, meaning that the UK will still leave the European Union on December 31st.
Position on fish hasn't changed. We'll only be able to make progress if the EU accepts the reality that we must be able to control access to our waters. And it's very important at this stage to emphasize that. Of course, we're not going to extend the transition period, but we want to make practical arrangements to help businesses in Northern Ireland. And we've agreed, for instance, a 1-year adjustment period, so there's no disruption to the flow of medicines. And we've already launched a 200 million trader support service to help agri-food businesses and others. And that's going to, more details will be announced shortly, Mr.
Meanwhile, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the next days would be decisive as the 27-member bloc seeks to clinch a trade deal with Britain after its departure from the European Union. The head of the EU executive told the European Parliament that major gaps could still lead to a rough split in trade with Britain past December 31st, an eventuality for which the bloc is prepared. Meghan, Britain's Duchess of Sussex, has revealed in an opinion article published in the New York Times that she had a miscarriage in July. This marks an extraordinarily personal disclosure coming from a high-profile British royal. The wife of Prince Harry wrote about the experience in detail, saying that it took place one July morning when she was caring for Archie, the couple's son. Meghan and Harry stepped back from royal duties and moved to the United States earlier this year. They have sought to forge a new role for themselves outside the constraints of the life in Britain's strictly codified royal bubble. Harry's grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, has never discussed her private life in any media interview in her 68-year reign. Meanwhile, royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliam says Meghan's very graphic and vivid account of her miscarriage will have gained the support and appreciation of the British royal family and will serve as solace and help other sufferers. The intimate details shared in Meghan's article are strikingly at odds with the usual policy of senior members of the British royal family, who reveal almost nothing about their personal lives.
Is that she's an articulate speaker, but the way she has written about the personal tragedy enables us very, very vividly to share, to a certain degree, what she went through. What I think is extremely powerful about it is not only what she says about herself, and this is certainly rare for members of the royal family to speak out, although there have been precedents in different fields. I would, for example, think back just some 3 years where Harry, most particularly, and also William to some degree, were talking about mental health and sharing some of their experiences. That was unprecedented then. There's no doubt that Meghan has very, very vividly told us what this experience was like, and the way she writes is very graphic.
Well, that's all for the world today. Thanks so much for staying with us. I'm Akaite Afia. Have a great evening and stay safe.